So first up, yes, it is that 2018 Ferrari Portofino. This one is kind of that entry-level Ferrari, if there were such a thing. It replaces the outgoing Ferrari California and California T models. As I say, this is an entry-level car, so you can get one of these for around $215,000 to $250,000, depending on options. So, you know, just an everyman's Ferrari. But despite that kind of entry-level tag, it's still an incredibly powerful car. So it's got a 3.9-litre twin-turbo V8, which gets up to 590 horsepower, which is an increase of 40 horsepower over the aforementioned California T. It can top out 199 miles per hour and does 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. And frankly, it just looks a Supra. So this is the Mark III Supra. There were two Supras before this, but they were before the kind of name change. So there was it used to be called the Celica Supra, and they were part of the Celica line. It was like the GT model of Celica had that kind of Supra moniker. This was the first car which carried the Supra name on its own, separate from the Celica as its own car line. So it's got a 2-litre inline 6 twin turbo, tops out about 207 horsepower. It's kind of at that era where you may suffer a little bit of turbo lag, so it's not as fast as getting a Mark IV Supra will set you back at least 50k. You can get an old Celica for probably $2,000. Anyway, this is the Porsche Guntherwerks 400R. This is a really interesting car, which I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people watching hadn't heard of, just because it's a bit of a curio. But it is built by a company that was called Forza, that's now calling themselves Guntherwerks, who previously used to make aftermarket wheels and body kits and things for cars. They have a good pedigree in making luxury car parts. This was their first attempt at making their own car. I say making their own car, it's quite clearly based on somebody else's car. And if you wanted to get your hands on one of these cars, you would need to contact them. You're probably a bit late now because they only made 25 of them. They're not making any more. But you need to contact them, and you'd have to pay in the region of $525 to sort of $670,000 US. And you would need to donate a Porsche 993 Carrera 2 as the donor car, because they would build this on top of that car that you've donated. The really cool thing about this car is the 993 gen of the Porsche 911 never had a GT3 RS line. That didn't start until the gen after this one, the 996. So what Guntherwerks wanted to do was think about, well, what would the GT3 RS of the 993 look like? And this is it. So it's effectively a track spec version. Yeah, so next up we have the 2018 Mercedes-AMG E63 S. This one, we called out earlier, you can unlock for getting 50% Festival Players completion in winter. This car is an absolute beast. Depending on what options you pick, you can end up paying around $120,000 for one of these. This particular model is the Model S, so it has an extra 30 horsepower, taking it up to 603 horsepower. I imagine that 3 being kind of important because the equivalent spec, the BMW M5, just has 600 horsepower. So I wouldn't want to say there's any like aggressive competition between Mercedes and BMW, but there obviously is. Small pickup truck. But this version adds on those wide arch kits, so you can get that extra steering angle, and it just dwarfs those other cars that you'll see in Formula Drift. So when you're thinking all of the Silvia cars, which are quite compact, even a Mustang is significantly smaller than this. Yeah, and it would have initially come with a flappy paddle gearbox because it's a modern supercar, but this one's been modified. So instead of the flappy gearbox, it uses a 6-speed sequential gearbox instead. Oh, and that's convenient, isn't it? Because that is another one of our Formula Drift cars. So I don't quite know how Tom's engineered this, but he is not the only one drifting down the